Maplewood Lane was a neighborhood that prided itself on quiet streets, perfect lawns, and an unspoken agreement that conformity was not optional. Every homeowner knew the rules, and every pet owner had learned to moderate their dog's behavior. At least that was the expectation. Among the residents, one figure had earned the reputation of a relentless enforcer: Karen Matthews. She had spent years policing the community, ensuring that every minor infraction was documented, every rule strictly applied, and every disturbance reported. But her next target would prove to be more clever than she anticipated. The trouble began one sunny afternoon when a homeowner, recently moved into the community, was enjoying a quiet day in their backyard. Their dog, a lively and affectionate golden retriever, was outside, enjoying the sun and occasional playtime. The dog barked occasionally, as dogs do, responding to passing neighbors, birds, and the occasional squirrel in the yard. To the homeowner, the barking was normal, nothing excessive or dangerous. To Karen, however, it was an intolerable disruption, a violation of the unwritten code of silence she believed defined Maplewood Lane. Karen, ever vigilant, documented the dog's behavior. She began recording videos from her window, noting every bark with obsessive attention. Each noise was cataloged, time-stamped, and described in meticulous detail. She compiled her findings into a formal complaint and submitted it to the HOA, framing the barking as a serious disturbance to the community's peace and safety. Karen's report was dramatic, almost theatrical, suggesting that the homeowner was negligent and that their dog posed a threat to neighborhood tranquility. The homeowner received the complaint with initial disbelief. The letter was filled with bureaucratic language, legalese, and a sense of urgency that was entirely disproportionate to the situation. The tone implied imminent consequences, fines, and potential legal action. The homeowner quickly realized that Karen's approach was relentless, and that simply apologizing or muting the dog temporarily would not satisfy her. Any move needed to be deliberate, strategic, and within the law. Instead of panicking, the homeowner began researching the local regulations regarding pets, noise ordinances, and HOA rules. Each document was scrutinized, every clause analyzed. It became clear that Karen's complaint, while dramatic, did not hold up under scrutiny. The dog had never barked excessively according to legal definitions, and the HOA's own regulations allowed for occasional noise as long as it did not constitute a repeated nuisance. The homeowner realized that knowledge could be a powerful tool, and that clever planning might turn the situation in their favor. Karen, meanwhile, escalated her campaign. She began knocking on neighbors' doors, soliciting statements that could support her claims. She painted the dog as a menace, exaggerating minor incidents and emphasizing inconvenience. Her persistence unnerved some residents, while others began to notice her obsession with minutiae. Quiet conversations began in driveways and front porches, as neighbors speculated whether Karen had truly overstepped. The homeowner observed the growing tension with careful attention, noting who might support their eventual strategy and who might unwittingly spread Karen's narrative. As days passed, the homeowner implemented subtle changes to comply with the spirit of the law while preparing for a larger, more calculated move. The dog schedule was adjusted, and careful records were kept of all outdoor activity. Each action was documented to prove compliance with noise ordinances. The homeowner also researched legal loopholes and HOA policies that might be exploited, focusing on technicalities that Karen had overlooked in her single-minded obsession. The tipping point arrived one evening when Karen, convinced the complaint had been ignored, called the local police. She insisted that the homeowner's dog was creating a disturbance, demanding immediate action. Officers arrived at the scene, assessing the situation. The dog barked politely at first but remained within normal behavior limits. The homeowner calmly presented their documentation: records of the dog's schedule, compliance with noise ordinances, and proof that the dog's behavior fell well within legal boundaries. The officers, recognizing that no violation had occurred, left without issuing any fines or warnings. Karen's confidence visibly faltered, though she maintained her composure outwardly. Word of the encounter spread quickly through the neighborhood. Some residents expressed quiet amusement, others relief. The homeowner had managed to turn an aggressive complaint into an opportunity to demonstrate knowledge, patience, and strategic thinking. Karen's influence, long unchecked, had encountered an unexpected obstacle. A homeowner who understood the law and the rules better than she did. The narrative began to shift subtly in the streets, with neighbors quietly admiring the homeowner's clever handling of the situation. By the end of the week, the tension had not disappeared, but the balance of power had begun to change. Karen continued to fume, obsessively monitoring the property, while the homeowner prepared for the next step, a move that would exploit every loophole, embarrass Karen publicly, and win the support of the community. What had started as a simple complaint over a dog's barking was evolving into a full-blown neighborhood spectacle, one in which clever strategy would ultimately outmatch obsessive control. The following week, Maplewood Lane was alive with hushed conversations and subtle glances. Neighbors had noticed the tension between Karen Matthews and the homeowner, and the story of the police visits spread quietly through front porches, driveways, and evening walks. While Karen believed she had struck a decisive blow by involving law enforcement, the homeowner had used the opportunity to observe, strategize, and prepare their next move. What seemed like a minor victory for Karen was, in reality, the setup for an even more audacious plan. The homeowner had realized that winning the confrontation required more than mere compliance. They needed to turn the complaint into an advantage, leveraging the very rules Karen sought to enforce. Extensive research into HOA bylaws, municipal noise ordinances, and precedent cases revealed a subtle loophole. The regulations defined disturbance, not by occasional barking but by sustained, excessive noise during restricted hours. Furthermore, the HOA rules allowed pets to be outside under certain conditions, including proper fencing and supervision, conditions the homeowner had already met. Armed with this knowledge, the homeowner quietly prepared the property. They installed a secondary play area for the dog that maximized visibility but remained fully compliant. This new area allowed the dog to exercise freely, while carefully maintaining acceptable noise levels. Motion-activated cameras and automated timers for outdoor activity ensured the dog's schedule could be verified at any moment. Every action was recorded meticulously, creating an unassailable trail of proof. The homeowner's preparation was meticulous, deliberate, and, most importantly, completely legal. Meanwhile, Karen continued her campaign, oblivious to the homeowner's preparations. She circulated flyers and emails to neighbors, claiming the dog had become unmanageable and that the HOA needed to act immediately. She emphasized minor instances, hoping repetition would persuade both the board and the community. But her obsession was her weakness. The more she tried to escalate the issue, the more transparent her tactics became. Observant neighbors began to question her motives, noticing that the dog's behavior was never objectively aggressive or disruptive. Small murmurs of skepticism began to ripple through the community. The homeowner used this shift in perception strategically. They shared subtle hints of their documentation with neighbors, demonstrating responsibility without appearing confrontational. Emails outlining the dog's schedule, recorded activity logs, and compliance checks were sent to the HOA and selectively to community members, proving that the homeowner was following every rule meticulously. Slowly, a subtle coalition began to form, not an overt rebellion against Karen, but a quiet acknowledgement that the homeowner's actions were lawful, rational, and considerate. The balance of social power in the neighborhood began to tip. Karen, sensing her influence waning, decided to escalate further. She called the HOA multiple times in a single day, demanded inspections, and attempted to mobilize a petition. But each attempt was met with calm, factual responses from both the board and the homeowner. Every claim she made was countered by precise documentation, timestamps, noise logs, and photographic evidence of proper supervision. Karen's own obsession with detail had blinded her to the legal nuances that the homeowner had mastered. Every attempt to intimidate or coerce became a public display of futility. The homeowner decided to take the next step, using the loophole to assert dominance cleverly. They introduced structured dog activity hours that adhered strictly to HOA ordinances but allowed for increased freedom within the legally permissible windows. By aligning their actions perfectly with the rules, the homeowner created a situation where the dog could bark, play, and exercise, technically within compliance, yet visibly more active than Karen was comfortable observing. Neighbors began to notice the irony. Karen's insistence on control had inadvertently allowed the homeowner to expand the dog's privileges within the community. This legal maneuver did more than comply. It humiliated Karen publicly. Every observation she made, every attempt to document a violation, was rendered moot by the homeowner's meticulous adherence to the law. The dog's activity, while noticeable, was fully within legal limits, and the community began to see the homeowner as clever and rational rather than confrontational. Karen's influence began to erode, her authority undermined by the very structure she had hoped to control. The tension in the neighborhood became a spectacle, with neighbors quietly cheering the homeowner's ingenuity while watching Karen's growing frustration. By midweek, the homeowner had transformed a simple complaint into a spectacle of strategy and legality. Karen's calls, emails, and inspections were rendered ineffective by precise planning and clever exploitation of technicalities. Neighbors whispered in admiration, observing how compliance and knowledge could outmaneuver obsession and authority. Karen, once the dominant force in Maplewood Lane, was now reduced to futile gestures and empty threats, while the homeowner quietly solidified their reputation as the clever, unshakable presence in the neighborhood. As the week drew to a close, the stage was set for the final act. The homeowner had leveraged the law, public perception, and subtle community influence to position themselves as the clear victor. Karen's obsession had become her weakness, and the neighborhood had begun to see the shift. The homeowner's strategic approach ensured that every subsequent action would further undermine Karen's credibility, all while remaining entirely within legal and HOA-compliant boundaries. The weekend arrived with a sense of anticipation across Maplewood Lane. Neighbors had quietly observed the escalating drama between Karen Matthews and the homeowner, with speculation growing about what would happen next. Karen, fueled by frustration and determination, was convinced that one final intervention could enforce her will. She patrolled the street, taking notes, filming minor movements of the dog, and preparing yet another complaint to the HOA. However, the homeowner had already prepared the decisive move, an action that would not only comply with every rule but also humiliate Karen publicly and win widespread admiration from the neighborhood. The homeowner implemented a subtle, yet brilliant, legal strategy. They expanded the dog's permitted activity in a way that perfectly aligned with HOA ordinances. Using scheduled outdoor exercise hours, strategically placed barriers, and a careful alignment with noise regulations, the dog could now play visibly in the yard at peak times, when Karen was most likely to observe. Every action was documented meticulously, creating an irrefutable record of compliance. Cameras recorded the dog's behavior, logs were maintained, and neighbors were subtly informed that the homeowner was following every rule to the letter. What seemed like ordinary dog play became a calculated display of lawful dominance. Karen, arriving to document the dog once again, was immediately confronted with the homeowner's meticulous planning. Every bark, every playful sprint was fully compliant with the law. Her attempts to capture violations were thwarted at every turn. Her outrage became visibly obvious. While the neighbors watched discreetly, some hiding smiles, others openly amused by the spectacle. Karen's obsession, which had once intimidated the community, now appeared absurd and petty. Every step she took to assert control only highlighted the homeowner's clever manipulation of the rules. Word of the homeowner's strategy spread quickly. Conversations buzzed about the audacity and ingenuity of using the rules themselves to counter an obsessive neighbor. The homeowner had not broken a single law, yet had expanded the dog's freedom and activity in a manner that showcased Karen's futility. Community members began openly supporting the homeowner, sharing subtle messages of admiration and even encouraging small gestures of acknowledgement. The balance of power in Maplewood Lane had shifted decisively. The final blow to Karen's influence came during a neighborhood gathering. The homeowner arranged a casual outdoor event where the dog's playful activity could be observed publicly, within the legal limits established by the HOA. Neighbors arrived, cameras discreetly recording, and the dog's energy became a focal point. Not as a nuisance, but as an example of lawful, clever planning. Karen's previous claims of disturbance were rendered meaningless in front of witnesses who could see the dog was acting entirely within the law. Her fury was visible, but powerless. She could neither issue fines, remove the dog, nor enforce her personal obsession. Every attempt she made was countered by precise adherence to rules, public visibility, and a growing wave of neighborhood support for the homeowner. By the end of the day, Karen had been effectively neutralized. Her influence, once absolute in Maplewood Lane, had been reduced to private frustration and public embarrassment. The homeowner's strategy had accomplished more than compliance. It had transformed a minor complaint into a showcase of intelligence, patience, and legal mastery. Neighbors whispered in admiration and subtle amusement, recognizing that one person's knowledge and strategic thinking could outmatch even the most obsessive enforcer. The dog, unaware of the surrounding drama, continued to play happily in the yard. Its barking, once a point of contention, became a symbol of victory and clever planning. The homeowner remained calm and composed, quietly enjoying the results of careful preparation and strategic execution. Karen, frustrated and humiliated, retreated, leaving the homeowner to enjoy the neighborhood's support and newfound respect. In the aftermath, Maplewood Lane had been transformed not by confrontation or force, but by knowledge, patience, and clever use of the law. The HOA was forced to acknowledge that the homeowner's actions were perfectly compliant, leaving Karen powerless. What had begun as a complaint about barking had become a community-wide lesson. Obsession and aggression cannot overcome meticulous strategy, lawful action, and quiet intelligence. The homeowner had not only defended their rights but had demonstrated the power of planning, legal knowledge, and patience. Karen's role as the neighborhood's self-appointed enforcer had been diminished, replaced by the realization that authority can be challenged and rules can be used creatively to ensure fairness, justice, and even entertainment. By the end of the week, life on Maplewood Lane returned to a new rhythm. The homeowner enjoyed peaceful afternoons in the yard with their dog. Neighbors occasionally stopped by to offer congratulations or share subtle praise, and Karen's obsessive vigilance had been effectively neutralized. The story of the barking dog, the legal loophole, and the homeowner's triumph became an example retold quietly across the community. A lesson in clever strategy and the surprising ways law and logic could triumph over obsession and control.